Hello, welcome to Microsoft Cloud Adoption webinar series. Today I'm going to present the first part of the 5 parts webinar series on Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. In short, we are going to also call it CAF. In this webinar, we are going to focus on building cloud strategy. Thank you very much for joining and listening. My name is Vivek Bhatnagar. I am CTO and founder of UnifyCloud. My day job is to help customers in the migration and modernization of their IT systems and application on Microsoft Azure. Let's look at what's our objective of this session. So there are 4 objectives of CAF strategy session. First, we plan to introduce you the cloud adoption framework and help you understand all elements of this framework and how this framework going to help you to transition or transformation to the cloud. Second, how can you assist a customer in building their own cloud strategy? And if they have already a cloud strategy, how you can validate and optimize that strategy. Third, we would like to discuss how the business case aligned with the strategy. And finally, we are going to explore some of the available tools and examples, which leads to the agenda for this thing. We are going to talk definitely in detail what is the cloud adoption framework and how it is helping customers and partners in their cloud journey. We are going to little bit dig deep that what's the need of a strategy, why we need a formal approach, what's the process of documenting a strategy. Then we look at different types of business cases. Finally, again, we are going to explore some of the tools available to us. One of the tools which we are going to go in little details is Cloud Journey Tracker tool. Rest of the tools we'll just read about brief and give you the links. We are also going to go through an example of Microsoft IT, how they have taken this journey themselves and what are the learnings they have from it. So let's talk about cloud adoption framework for Azure. The cloud fundamentally changes how enterprise pose, use, and secure technology resources. Traditionally, enterprise assumed ownership and responsibility for all aspects of technology, from infrastructure to software. But as they move to the cloud, enterprise can provision the consumed resources only when they require, or they can actually ask these resources on demand. Although the cloud offers tremendous flexibility in design choices, at the same time, enterprise need a proven and consistent way of adopting cloud technologies. The Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure meets that need. It provides the guidance and the critical decision throughout the cloud adoption. The Cloud Adoption Framework is coming out as one Microsoft approach. Like before 2019, there were multiple approaches that basically was there. Now Microsoft combined everything into one single approach to help their customers, partners, even Microsoft employees. This framework gives customer a set of tools, guidance, and narratives to shape their technology, business, and people strategy for driving the desired business outcome during this cloud adoption effort. This guidance is also aligned with multiple phases, and all these phases form into a life cycle. So it's not that you start from one and then get out on the other side of the cycle, but this is just a cycle. So you select certain workloads and you migrate those in the way you will learn different things for people, process, and technology, and implement those kinds of feedbacks, and then again start the cycle again. So this is how the brief we can know what is cloud adoption framework and how it basically works. Let's look at why we have these phases. So if you look at cloud adoption framework, it is mainly 3 main phases. So plan, ready, adopt. These are the 3 main phases which forms cloud adoption framework, which is preceded by something called define a strategy. So how do you build a strategy? And also that it's surrounded by something like cloud operation things, which is governance and manage. So here, this is just a slide to give you an idea that why we think into these sections. So for example, the first thing is to define like strategy. So the first question typically everybody has in their mind that, okay, I'm starting this journey of digital transformation. Where do I start? How do I start? What should I think? What are the things that should go in building the strategy? So that's the main question. And typically Microsoft has a very good tool called Cloud Journey Tracker, which actually asks you around about 28 questions. Based on your answer, it actually suggests to you what you need to do, what path you need to follow, and other things. Um, it also help you to understand like your motivations for driving or for getting started on digital transformation journey. As we move to the understanding from motivations to the planning for it, like how do we plan? The main question again come like how do we organize the teams? How do we organize the company resources? How do we bring the shareholders back supporting these decisions? And that's where we start the planning of the cloud migration, modernization, or planning for digital transformation. And this also start with where do we find the guidance? Where do we have a sample plans? And Microsoft has a template for cloud adoption plan, which actually help you in going through this planning phase. It also answer one of the important thing that what skills you need, because as you move to this journey of the cloud, you need to make sure that you have the required skills, so you can train your people to learn new skills so that they can manage and maintain once you're on the other side of this journey. So that's all about the planning and phase. But as you complete the planning phase, then you start thinking about readiness. Now the readiness means that how do you configure Azure environment? And first thing for everybody think that, okay, can we bring our on-premise learning to the cloud? How do we configure it for security? How do we configure for different types of compliances that they have to follow? How do we govern what will happen if there is a disaster? What will happen if there is a pandemic like COVID-19 we are facing nowadays? So this is all the information which is Microsoft is trying to help and putting into some sort of a landing zone blueprints. Blueprints are nothing but combination of all these things giving as a package so that you can apply and be ready for Azure migration. Once you're ready, then the most important phase start, which is like adopt, which has two parts like migrate and innovation. The main thing here which customer I want to know, like, they have like existing workload, like existing application data and virtual machines, networking, other aspect. How do they start in this journey? Which application, which database, which workload should go first, which should go next, which should not go and stay at on-premise, which should re-architect, which should they refactor? These are the critical questions that they have to answer while in this stage. And there are a lot of help from Microsoft in getting started, the Azure guides and other thing. Microsoft will also have some sort of a smart assessment tool which help you going through this journey and help you like in going through the assessments and another thing. And simply this adopt phase also has something called innovate. Innovate means for those companies who are start building natively for cloud. And at this point of time, you want to understand what products and services you can use in the cloud, particularly in Azure. How do you get started? Other thing. So this complete typically adopt phase. So till now we have gone through strategy, plan, ready, and adopt. Let's talk about the phase which is surrounding all of these, which is around the operation of the Azure. As we know, we talk about there are a lot of controls which actually govern to the enterprises. Like you have controls coming from the country you are operating, then compliances for your customers, privacy laws, security, and all those things are very important for every one of us. So how do we do it in our environment, and how do we benchmark it that how good we are doing this governance? Are we doing, where are we stand in respect to our industry? Where can we improve? And then most importantly, how can we improve? So all those tools are typically provided by Microsoft. And also there's a tool called benchmark assessment, which you can take in a question answer mode, and then it will generate a very good insight that what should you do next. And then it brings us to the last thing, which is called manage or operate. And here mainly like how do I consistently manage and operate my cloud environment? Like how do I get like started on this? Like what thing I need to measure, where the alert would go, where my logs would be there, how do I back up disaster recovery and other aspect every day of function? How do we keep everything current? How do I get a configuration of every of my system? How do I get inventory? How do I get a cost controls and other thing? All those things fall into operational aspect of the cloud. Microsoft has a lot of tools available. One of the tools is architectural review, which constantly provide some kind of a review of the architecture and continuously help the customer moving that part. So this just a slide. I try to give you an idea that why Microsoft built cloud option framework and why it has a structure as it is showing. Again, cloud option framework has three main stages like planning, readiness, and adopt, which is preceded by a very important stage, which is defining cloud strategy, and then surrounded by the operational and management aspect of the cloud. So that's what this will give us a little bit of formal picture for this cloud adoption framework. So as you can see, this actually shows all the phases and mainly three phases and surrounded by operation other aspect. Uh, Here, like we should little bit talk about all these phases and at least the main points. We are going to cover this webinar or all these phases into the 5 series of webinars. The first series is for defining strategy, second is for planning, third is for readiness, fourth is for adopt, and final talk is mostly on govern and manage. In typically defining strategy series, we are going to talk more about what kind of motivations customer has for moving to the cloud, what kind of outcomes they are related to, what are the business justification can be created just to get all stakeholders in place, and how do you select your first workload to move the cloud, what are the criteria and other things you have to do while moving the first project to the cloud. So that's always very, very important. So that's all covered into our strategy session. In planning, we are going to go deep into digital state, that how do you understand what you are running inside your IT, or do you know like your all apps, your databases and other thing? Do you have the configuration in place? Do you know like which things are out of service, other things? So all those things like analysis of digital state, then aligning the organization for the migration, knowing the skills and details, and finally using all these information and building a cloud adoption plan. As we move to the readiness, and readiness is which some people also call it as pre-migration, and this is one of the most important phase, which I feel to make the whole journey as a successful in the end. In this, we prepare a lot of readiness and primarily building a landing zone. A landing zone means that you are preparing your subscription, your environment to bring your apps data into a proper format. And this is where like you talk about security, you talk about monitoring, you talk about compliances, you talk about how the backup will happen, what the disaster recovery will happen, what will happen if something not working, who you should call, and other all aspect of those are actually discussed into this. And there are a lot of interviews with the app owners and infrastructure owners to build the whole landing zone. And there are a lot of blueprints are available from Microsoft. When I say blueprints, these are like set of these things for a particular compliance standard. For example, there is a blueprint for Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework best practices, or there is a blueprint for GDPR, or there's a blueprint for healthcare and HIPAA care. So all these things like driven from these. So if you are in a healthcare industry, you can most likely going to use one blueprint. If you are a manufacturing automobile industry, there is a one blueprint for you. So these things are available like in case you want to see that all the things you have to discuss with the team, which will actually complete the pre-migration phase. And then we start migration phase. And in migration is very, very important to understand. And this the whole migration phase success depend on how nicely you have done on the previous stages. So do you have a good cloud strategy, and are you using this cloud strategy to drive your cloud adoption plan, and have you used that cloud adoption plan to drive your readiness? So all these phases work will actually will be very important to make the cloud adoption a success. And typically cloud adoption has a two parts. One is like migrate, and the other one is innovate. And the main difference between migrate and innovate is basically how closely you are using cloud capabilities to impact your business outcome. So those things are important, and I'm going to discuss detail in that adopt phase, and that's a migration phase. And that basically brings us to the operation side of the cloud. So now you have your cloud workloads running in the cloud, you have apps, data, and everything in the cloud. How do you govern the whole thing? How do you know that when you go to a sleep every day, the cloud environment is secure, there's nobody changing configuration, nobody have access and other thing? All that fall into the governance. And there is a way to govern the cloud. Their templates are there. Microsoft Azure has a lot of tools to help you cloud governance, and also to operate a cloud day every day. So every day the reports of compliances, security, monitoring would be available. The backup, disaster recovery, all those will be in place, and also giving you a very high confidence that everything is working as expected. So this is just a brief about cloud adoption framework. Typically, cloud adoption framework guidance is cloud agnostic. So you can use this guidance to nearly any of the public cloud very easily, because these things are not targeted to a particular cloud. I'm going to pick up mostly example from Microsoft Azure because that's what our focus is. But it's not limit you to think about any other public clouds also.